Okay, so we've talked about when you are given a point and a slope, that point might be the y-intercept, it might not be the y-intercept. And then we've talked about when you have to find the slope because you've been given 2 points. That was what we did in the previous sections. But what we're going to talk about now is what happens if they don't give you 2 points and they don't give you the slope. And the only way that will happen is if they give you enough information for you to figure out the slope. So they're kind of asking you to do a little detective work here, right? So first thing we see is we're asked to write something in standard form. Again, we're not going to use standard form to begin with. We'll use it when we get to the end. But we're given a point, all right? So we want to ask the question, is the point that I'm given the y-intercept or is it not? Right? Again, that's a no. We don't have the y-intercept because that is a 4, not a 0. And then we always ask, do I know the slope? And the answer to this is no, they don't tell me the slope. All right, but they also don't give me enough information to use the slope formula. But again, here is the clue that they're giving me. They're telling me that the slope of the line that I'm going to write is parallel to this line right here. All right? So essentially what they're doing is asking us to use this information, to use this line just for its slope, but then make it pass through this point. All right? So the slope of this line, because this is in slope-intercept form, the slope of this line is -3/4. So m equals -3/4. Now, I just want you to think of this as kind of like a smash and grab. You're going into someplace here. This is our y equation. You want to grab the slope, and then you want to get out of there. Do not be tempted by that -8. All right. What we're being asked to do is let's say this. What's happening is we're given a line that has a y-intercept of -8, so it's going to cross somewhere down here, and it's got a negative slope. Right? What they're asking us to do is write an equation of a line that is parallel to this, but goes to the point 4, 2. So somewhere up here. Right? So they're asking us to write this equation right here. Right? Parallel to this, but passes through this point. Our line could not have a -8 as the y-intercept. That's this guy down here. Right? So don't be tempted by him. Just take out the slope. That's the only thing that we want of this. Everything else in that is trash, right? So we've gotten the slope now. Again, that's actually a lot easier than if they had given us 2 points because the slope is right there for us. We just have to go in and grab it. Then we know that we're not going to have the y-intercept, or we're not going to use the form that requires the y-intercept. We're going to use y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So we've got y minus y1 is 2 equals m, which is -3/4. And x minus x1 is 4. We don't have a choice. We have to use that point. That's the only one we're given. The ones that we did previously, we had 2 points. We could use either one when we fill that in, but this one we have to use that 4, 2. All right, put it in standard form. That's where we use that list. So again, I'm going to discourage you from getting rid of parentheses first. In this case, I would say get rid of the fraction. So we're going to multiply through by 4. So we've got 4y minus 8 equals 4 times -3/4. Well, the 4's will cancel, so we'll end up with -3 times x minus 4. Now get rid of parentheses. So I've got 4y minus 8 equals -3x plus 12. I'm going to bring the x over to the left side and the 8 over to the right side. So when I do that, I'm going to get positive 3x plus 4y equals, bringing the 8 over gives me 20 on this side. I just check to make sure it's in standard form. So x and y are in alphabetical order on the same side. The constant is alone on the other side. X has a positive coefficient, and all coefficients and constants are whole numbers, or sorry, non-fractions, they're integers. Right, so that would be our answer. Okay, let me see. I can't remember how many of these I gave you. So I'm just going to stop at that one. Rewatch this if you need to. But again, this is pretty straightforward. We just are grabbing that slope, ignoring the -8, and just going from there. All right, let's do the same thing again, except this time, instead of doing standard form, we're going to do slope-intercept form. So again, we start off, we say, do I know the y-intercept? I look at the x-coordinate. I don't. Do I know the slope? No, I don't, but it's pretty easy for me to find it. But I'm not going to use the slope formula because I'm not given 2 points. I'm not given the slope. I have to kind of do my detective work here. All right, so I'm going to go through here and I'm going to say I want my line that I'm drawing to be parallel to this one, which has a slope of 3/4. Again, smash and grab. Go in and grab the 3/4. Ignore the -2 here, or the -2, and I just want to write slope is 3/4. Since I don't know the y-intercept, it's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. This is always lovely when that happens, when there's a 0 as the y-coordinate, because we get y minus 0. I'm not even going to bother to write the -0 because it's just going to leave me with a y. And then m, which is 3/4, and x minus a -4, which is x plus 4. All right. Now, usually I say get rid of the fractions. We've come across ones like this before where the 3/4 and the 4 would reduce, and I've said, no, just keep practicing, but I want you to see what it looks like. So let's do it in this case. So let's distribute the 3/4 here. So I get y equals 3/4 x plus 3. Again, you could still multiply through by the 4 instead, but since since 4 goes into 4 evenly and leaves us without a fraction there, it's fine to do that. Okay, now I'm going to clear out the fraction, multiply by 4. So this becomes 4y equals 3x plus 12. I'm going to bring the 3 over. Actually, you know what? Let's do another method just so that you can see that there are other ways to do it. Since the 3 in front of the x is already positive, I'm going to move the 4y over to the right and the 12 over to the left. So I get -12 equals 3x minus 4y. And you could leave it in that way. X and y are in alphabetical order. X is positive, no fractional coefficients. Constant is on the other side, but again, I know most people like those x and y on the left term, so then you could just switch it to this. Okay, next section. All right, for this section, it looks very similar to the last, or the last two. Write the standard form of the equation of the line through the given point, but now it says and perpendicular to the given line. All right, so again, I'm going to start with my questions. Do I know the slope? Well, no, they don't tell me the slope, but they also don't tell me 2 points, so I can't find the slope using the slope formula. What is the point that I know? Is it the y-intercept, or is it just a regular point? I look here, it's not the y-intercept. So I know I'm going to have to use y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, but now we've got to worry about the slope. So now it's telling me it's perpendicular, right? So I'm still going to go in, I'm still going to take this from it, the slope, but I'm not going to use -3/8 as my slope. If you remember that the slope of lines that are perpendicular have opposite reciprocals. So the line that they gave me has slope -3/8, but our line is going to have slope positive, the opposite of this, and then 8/3. All right, so again, I do not use that 5, and I'm taking this, but I'm finding the opposite reciprocal. All right, if we were to do this one, again, I'm just going to sketch it. Let's say this is 5, and let's say this is a slope of 3/8. Our line has to pass through 6, 11. Holy smokes. Let's say this is 6, and 11 is somewhere up here. And it's got to be perpendicular to this one, so it's going to come down like this and hit it at a right angle. All right, so our slope, oh my gosh, hold on. Whoops. Let's try this again. This has a slope of -3/8. All right, and here's 6, 11, let's say this. And I want it to hit this line and form right angles or be perpendicular. So ours is going to have positive 8/3. It's going to be steeper and it's going to be going in the positive direction. Okay, so let's go back here and fill in the information. Y minus y1, 11, equals m, which is positive 8/3, x minus 6. All right, let's clear out that fraction. Again, this would be a case where you could distribute because the 3 goes into the 6, but I'm going to just do it the way that I would prefer you do it, which is get rid of that fraction first. 3y minus 33 equals 8 times x minus 6. Now I'll distribute 3y minus 33 equals 8x minus 48. Let's move the 8x over, so negative 8x plus 3y, and we'll move the 33 over. That's going to give us a negative 15. We're close. We have x and y on the same side, constant on the other. Coefficients are integers, but we just need to change that so the leading coefficient is positive, or the coefficient of the x is positive. So we get 8x minus 3y equals positive 15. All right, and then let's do one more. I can't remember how many we have here. Oh yeah, we do have some special ones. Okay, let's take a look at number 41. All right, so this is the same thing as we did before, except now we're asking to leave it in slope-intercept form at the end. We can't use slope-intercept at the beginning because as we check our ordered pair, this is not the y-intercept. So we're going to have to use the y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Are you guys saying these in your sleep yet? Hopefully you are. All right, we are not given the slope, but we are given information. We're given a clue as to how to find our slope. And it has to be, the slope of our line has to be perpendicular or the opposite reciprocal of this. All right, so our slope is going to be positive, the opposite of that, and 6 over 1, the reciprocal, or just 6. All right, so our slope is 6. All right, so y minus y1, so that's going to be plus 3, equals m times x minus x1, which is 9. It's asking us to write it in slope-intercept form. So again, when it says slope-intercept form, we do not want to clear out any fractions. That's fine because we don't have a fractional slope or fractional coordinates. So we're just going to distribute here. So we're going to have y plus 3 equals 6x minus 54. And then all we need to do is get rid of the 3 here so that we just have y by itself. So we've got y equals 6x minus 57. And that's it. Okay, last part. All right, I just want you to, actually maybe it's not completely the last part. I want us to do these 4 together. Because these are special cases. Remember, when we've got lines that are of the form y equals some number, it looks like this. No, it doesn't. It looks like this. When we've got lines that are x equals some number, it looks like this. And so when we're talking about parallel to or perpendicular to, it's not quite as easy because we don't necessarily get to find a reciprocal. Okay, so this first case, again, let's just go through here and point out that not one single one of these is the y-intercept. So the first one passes through the point 4, 3, and it's parallel to x equals 0. So again, that is that type of line. So if it's parallel to x equals 0, which is this line right here, the y-axis, and it goes to the point 4, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, this right here. If it's parallel to that, it has to be in that same form. It has to be an x equals. Well, what is x going to equal? It's going to equal the x coordinate of the point that we're given. So this line is going to be x equals 4. All right, the next one says we've got a point -2, -8 that our line passes through, and it's parallel to y equals 4. So let's say it's right up here. All right, but our point is way down here. It's -2, -8. So let's say it's down here, -2, -8. Our line has to be this one right here. right? Well, if it's parallel to that, it has to have the same form. So it has to be y equals, and it has to be the y coordinate of the line that it passed through, or the point that it passed through, so it's y equals -8. Notice we're not even doing what's the slope, because these are such simple but weird equations or graphs. So we're just using the fact that if they're parallel, they have to be in the same form. If they're perpendicular, they have to be in the opposite form. So if it passes through the point 6, 1, right here, and it's perpendicular to this, this is x equals 0. If it's perpendicular to that, it has to be in the opposite form, right? So it's going to be a y equals, and it's going to be whatever the y coordinate equaled. So in this case, it's got to be y equals 1. All right, the last one in this section is it's got to be perpendicular to y equals 4. So again, here's y equals 4, but it has to pass through the point -4, -1. So since it's perpendicular to, it has to be of the opposite form. It has to be an x equals line, and it has to be the x coordinate. So it's -4. You won't see a ton of those, but I just want to make sure that you know that when it says parallel to, it keeps the form. When it says perpendicular to, it gives the opposite form. So instead of x equals some number, it's y equals some number. Okay, let's do one of these and then you are on your own. All right, convert the equation from standard form to slope-intercept form. We've always been going from either point slope form or y equals mx plus b form into this. So how do we change back? Because sometimes that might happen, right? So again, if we've got y equals mx plus b form, mx plus b, what we're trying to do is basically undo everything that we did before. So here we have x and y together on one side. Here we want x and y on opposite sides. Here, y can have a coefficient that's not 1. Here, it cannot have a coefficient that's not 1. So these are actually much easier, much fewer steps. We're just going to get the x onto the other side. So we have 8y equals -3x plus 11. And then we just want to divide by 8 to get y by itself. So we're going to have y equals -3/8 x plus 11/8. And that's it. Okay, good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.